I want to start this video by showing a few instances of the complete psychosis that is affecting the left. Many people will say, Tim, you talk about the left a whole lot. I am going to show you the data as to why this is. I'm a moderate individual. I lean somewhat to the left on many issues, but I'm very opposed to tribalism. I stand more on principles. I consider myself a bit roguish, and I'm not necessarily trusting of anyone, really. I want free speech for everybody. So I've actually got someone on the left I'm going to defend in this video in terms of free speech because it's deserving of everybody. At the same time, I will condemn the vandalism against the Trump baby blimp. But there is a serious issue, and I've got several things I want to highlight. This first thing you're seeing is a bunch of guys getting out of a car and physically attacking Trump supporters. Why? Now, we've seen people in Trump rallies and Antifa shows up to protest, but in this instance, these guys just showed up and started attacking them. We have a story about a woman in Florida who stabbed herself several times because she was tired of living in Trump's country. What's happening to people to precipitate this kind of complete psychosis that is affecting the left? I gotta say, as many people have pointed out, the conservatives are not attacking people in the street. The conservatives, for the most part, I don't want to be absolute. The conservatives are not trying to get people banned for the most part. It tends to be the left, and not everyone on the left. As I've mentioned time and time again, Gallup and Pew show that most Democrats want moderate policy, but there is a growing section of the left that is being driven absolutely insane. And you want to see the data? Because I've got a ton of data to show you today, which is terrifying. Zach Goldberg on Twitter said, spent some time on Lexis Nexis over the weekend. Depending on your political orientation, what follows will either disturb or encourage you. But regardless of political orientation, I'm sure we can all say holy effing S. The first thing I want you to see is this. This is a graph. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but it shows number of news articles mentioning diversity and inclusion. Around 2010, it started to increase, but around 2013 or 14, it spikes dramatically from around 3,000 articles in the year to over 15,000 mentions of diversity and inclusion. And there's a lot more data that we're going to go through to show you this is driving people insane. And I have some hypotheses. I have a hypothesis as to why this happened, and I've got more data to back this up. But first, what is Lexis Nexis? For those that aren't familiar, it is a corporation providing computer-assisted legal research, as well as business research and risk management services. They have pioneered the electronic accessibility of legal and journalistic documents. So it's basically a big database. And what we have here from Zach Goldberg is a thread showing news articles mentioning certain terms. I believe I have an explanation for this. As I've mentioned many times in the past, this was the explosion, the era of Huffington Post and BuzzFeed, the digital media organizations. If you've watched my content in the past, I did a story about Mike.com. Mike.com was called out in an expose for being run by tech bros. My sources within Mike say they're libertarian types, more right-wing. But why was Mike.com producing woke leftist content? Because rage-inducing content gets the most shares. Thus, we've seen a massive market opportunity to make people angry. So let's go through this thread. The next one is number of news articles mentioning whiteness. And you can see, actually, let me see if I can, I'll zoom in on this. You can see that around 2011 or 12, whiteness skyrocketed from 500 mentions to over 2,000 mentions in the news. I do want to stop here and say before we get started, before we go any further, make sure you go to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. The shout out is more important than ever because they've started purging channels on YouTube. No one knows who's safe or who isn't. You may just get stripped of monetization, so your support is greatly appreciated. But of course, liking and commenting is the best thing you can do. That engagement tells YouTube the video is worth watching and impactful. And share the video and subscribe if you haven't already. We can see, as Zach Goldberg moves on, number of news articles mentioning critical race theory. Same bit of data, though this one spikes around 2006 or 7. And we can see it's got a gradual increase, though not all of these graphs are perfect. This one's showing from 100 to 300, so it's not the same. Unconscious bias, seemingly without mention until 2012 to 13, skyrockets from only a few hundred to 6,000 mentions in news articles. White privilege, same thing. Almost no indication, less than 500, around 200 or 300. But around 2012, shoots up to over 2,500 mentions. What we're seeing here is a dramatic shift towards this new religious dogma of intersectionality. Systemic racism skyrocketing at the same time. Diversity training has been gradually increasing, but did see some spikes around the same time. The word privilege is interesting because privilege means many things. But in the late 90s, we saw the word usage skyrocket. This is not necessarily indicative of the concept of social justice privilege. However, in 2015, we see another massive hockey stick, as they call it. Discrimination, social justice, police brutality may be one of the most important. And I'll stress this. The police brutality videos that started circulating on Facebook it made money. Absolutely made money. These articles got shared far and wide because people were outraged at the idea. But consider this. While police brutality is a serious problem, it's been around for a long time. This, the reason it's getting shared so much was because individual actors knew it would generate ad revenue, not because they cared about social justice. But as they say, out of sight, out of mind, I imagine the inverse is true. If you inundate people with news articles about these topics, they begin to believe this is reality. But there's something I like to call the scaling problem. I've discussed this before, but we'll go into it now. If Apple releases 100 unique gold-plated iPhones and gives them out to 100 celebrities, and 1% of them break, no one will care. That's one phone. One celebrity will say, hey, my phone broke, and people will be like, oh, that's weird, one phone broke. Who cares? All the other phones are fine. But what happens if they issue 100 million phones and 1% break? You now have 1 million posts appearing on social media. It's the same margin of error, but now it's a bigger problem because you're hearing about it more. This is essentially what I think we're seeing. These are all serious issues that we can talk about, but because the media started shoving it all down our throats, people started to see mountains when there's actually molehills. Marginalized skyrocketed. People of color, which is particularly interesting, started to skyrocket around 2015. The words racism in the New York Times. The number of newspapers using the word white supremacy spiked. Intersectionality spiking around the same time. All of this, it goes on and on and on. So now we get to the results of this psychosis. And this is absolutely fascinating by Zach Goldberg. Mean in-group bias by race ethnicity. Scores denote mean differences in warmth between in-group and out-group feeling thermometers. So I can try to explain this to the best of my understanding. That a positive score means that a racial group views their own racial group favorably. We can see in this story, this graph being shown, the only group, at least the only group listed, that has a negative view of their own race is white liberals. Check this out. Black in-group bias is positive, 15.58, the highest, which means among the black community, they view themselves typically favorably. Hispanic is 12.83 positive, Asian is 13.94 positive, and non-liberal whites is 11.62 positive. But white liberals is negative 13.17. The only racial group listed in this graph, I'm not saying it's an exhaustive list of the data, shows that white liberals view white people negatively, which is very, very strange. The story reads, remarkably, white liberals were the only subgroup exhibiting a pro-outgroup bias, meaning white liberals were more favorable towards non-whites and are the only group to show this preference for a group other than their own. Indeed, on average, white liberals rated ethnic and racial minority groups 13 points or half a standard deviation warmer than whites. As is depicted in the graph below, this disparity is feelings of warmth toward in-group versus out-group is even more pronounced among whites who consider themselves very liberal, where it widens to just under 20 points. Notably, while white liberals have consistently evinced weaker pro-in-group biases than conservatives across time, the emergence and growth of a pro-out-group bias is actually a very recent and unprecedented phenomenon. I'll state this. Among conservatives, their in-group favorability is still it's slightly more by a few points than the black community, and that is very conservatives. Interestingly, however, your moderate conservative has a lower in-group favorability than all other groups outside of white liberals who hate white people. The point is, if they want to claim that conservatives are white supremacists, the data actually proves every other racial group is more in favor of their own group than conservatives. Moderates, for the other hand, are even lower. Moderates are a 9.42 in favor of their in-group of white people. So this is absolutely fascinating because it shows us not only are conservatives not far right or extremists or racial identitarians, but that they're actually less so than non-whites as a whole. Non-liberals as a whole and all other non-white groups. To put it simply, if we're going to claim any group is more racial identitarian, according to this data, blacks are more pro-in-group than any other group outside of the very conservative. So while you certainly can say there is a far-right white identitarian or more favorability among ultra-conservatives, moderate, just general conservative, not the fringe, not the far-right, regular old conservatives score less. This is very, very important data. Now, there's other data to suggest why this is all happening. As I showed you, we can see this dramatic spike in all of these these are not necessarily far left, these are regressive ideology. This is left-wing identitarianism skyrocketing. So this may be why we're seeing this data where very conservatives are pro-in-group and very liberals are almost minus 20 opposed to white people. It could be because this news is sort of radicalizing these two fringe factions. We can see that moderates, however, the data shows it. No, I'm sorry, regular conservatives and moderates are not fringe, right-wing, white supremacist or anything like that. But there's some more data we can talk about. One of the interesting things pointed out to me when I tweeted about this is from Justin Owings, who says, here's your smoking gun. The huge uptick in rage bingo paralleled the shift of news consumption to social media and counter to the demise of print. In one chart he shows from Pew, we can see that around this time in 2010, print circulation is on the decline. The next image he shows is also from Pew. More people are getting their news on social networks. Another piece of data from Pew, no change in share of getting news on social media in 2018. So from 2016, 17, and 18, there was no change. And of course, we also see something interesting, a massive spike in users of Facebook. This data lends some evidence to my hypothesis. BuzzFeed and Huffington Post were exploiting the emotions of individuals using Facebook's algorithm to get more shares. Websites like Upworthy and Mike were doing the same thing, rage-inducing content. Spreading these ideas was lucrative, and that's what the market allowed, and it worked. We have some more data to go over as well. This person, Just a Slowpoke, responded to me saying, I wonder what could have happened in 2010 that led to there being so many more news articles. Well, it's not so much about more news articles, it's about the mentions. But as we can see, just before 2010, the prominence of Twitter. Twitter encourages you to post mean things about other people, which I believe is leading us down this path where news organizations then are posting extremely hate-inducing and rage-inducing content. People are becoming angry and they really, really hate each other and they want to burn it all down regardless of who they hurt. However, this is predominantly affecting the left. As I showed you with the other data, the in-group, out-group bias is predominantly only exists on the left. So let me show you this data one more time. When they say that white liberals are negative, and that's unprecedented, it is liberals and very liberals. Regular white people don't feel this in-group, out-group bias the same way. It is this news is affecting the white left predominantly. Now, I do believe it's affecting everyone on the left, which is why these, I believe it was a group of black men who came and attacked Trump supporters. It, of course, affects everybody on the left. There are certainly black conservatives who are not attacking people, so it's not actually, in my opinion, an issue of race at all. There is, however, some more data I want to go over. Some people have said the only reason you're seeing this spike is because Huffington Post and BuzzFeed emerged, and with the explosion of the internet, all other words started getting attention. The reality is that's just not true. In fact, we can see that there's certain words like, let's find one, slights. Slights has been used, up and down, back and forth. The word violence is up and down, though it has spiked recently. Oppressive has been spiking up and down. Demeaning. There are many words that are not related to social justice and the regressive left that are not getting the same kind of spike in usage. Victimization is not. Oppression is. Victimized isn't. Abused is. Offended isn't. While offended has seen a spike, it's not as large. Humiliated, stigmatized. Safe space has. The point I'm trying to say is, if there are other words not related to social justice, like nullifying, What this means is the expansion of digital media did not precipitate an expansion of the use of every word. The issue is this data coming from Lexis Nexis goes back to 1970. They were tracking newspapers. The explosion in usage of words related to intersectional feminism and left-wing identitarianism is unique. Other words did not experience this same growth. If it was neutral, we would see every word seeing massive growth. So the point is, this is unique, at least in my interpretation. I could be wrong. It is entirely unique to the regressive left and identitarianism. War has not seen any big uptick. AIDS has actually gone down. General Motors has gone down. Church has gone down. Radio has gone down. Duties has gone down. These are neutral words that did not see an uptick when digital media expanded and more media outlets started to emerge. It is specifically the fringe left-wing identitarianism, and it is driving the left insane, if you were to ask me. And let me just stress, a Florida woman stabbed herself 3 times because of Donald Trump. She didn't want to live in Trump's country. That is Trump derangement syndrome to such an extreme degree that a woman has stabbed herself over the thought of Trump existing. The media is radicalizing people and making them go insane. And now we can see stories like this that I highlighted earlier in the day. Google fired a Republican engineer for speaking out against the outrage mobs. This is where we're headed. Things are going to get worse. Companies, this is why I'm not in favor of laissez-faire capitalism. I'll be completely honest. When you see this explosion in words, it's because the market allows it. I don't know what the solution is because I don't believe in regulating speech. People should be allowed to talk about these issues, but it is a challenge when you realize it was market incentives that led these libertarian types to start companies, get massive investment, and produce the most insane content. I would posit this is worse than the fake news problem. Around the same time, people started producing websites that did nothing but fake news. They'd quite literally make things up. Much of this is the same thing, but they skirt the line of reality and truth so that you can't accuse them of making it up. It's just their opinion. But the overtly fake stuff was done for the same reason. It put cash in people's pockets. I know people who produced almost nothing but police brutality content, and they made a ton of money. Thousands of dollars per day writing about police brutality. It worked. This, when backed with venture capital, resulted in the BuzzFeeds, the Voxes, Verge, Vice, etc. They were able to exploit rage and human emotion to make the most money. And now the Democrats are being driven out of their goddamn minds. People are being attacked in the street, and it's only going to get worse. And I gotta admit, I do not know the solution. But I want to make sure I stress, not everybody on the left supports this stuff, and not everybody on the left is happy that it's happening. I want to stress that there are victims on the left as well, and I'm absolutely proud to defend the free speech of people like Rania Kalik, who produces anti-war content. I've made reference to Mafic Media many times. They're a left-wing anti-war media organization that were targeted by CNN and suspended on Twitter. Rania Kalik, in response to the Vox adpocalypse, tweeted, "It's interesting to me how mainstream media people are often insisting that we must do this purge of the far right. But it always ends up hurting independent journalists and leftists, almost like those mainstream media folks want social media companies to erase their alternative media competition." She tweeted this in response to Glenn Greenwald, who was outraged or concerned with the banning, the demonetization of journalist Ford Fisher, who is an independent journalist, not really left or right. He covers things on the ground in a rather fair and neutral way, and even Carlos Maza came to his defense. But Rania is right. Where are the mainstream media people speaking out against them getting banned? She said, also, these same people screaming at social media companies to purge the far right to protect women and minorities from harassment didn't breathe a word of concern when CNN got Facebook to censor my work, videos by a minority woman, because they don't like my outlet in anti-war politics. Spot on. She says, I just can't take your concern about harassment of minorities and women seriously when you don't care and even cheer on the censorship of someone like me, a minority and a woman. And I completely agree. Free speech is for everyone. When that woman in the UK stabbed the Trump baby balloon, I made a video rejecting it. I tweeted out immediately when I saw it, wrong, do not do this. Those people have every right in our existence, in reality. It is a God-given right for them to stand up and mock Donald Trump till the ends of time. That's what makes America great, respecting this idea that you can point the finger at the president and flick him off and say, you're a big dumb baby. I respect that, by all means. I recognize there's a problem when the media chases after it for money, but I still believe in free speech. When Rania Kalik produces anti-war content from the left, critical of Donald Trump, I also respect and support that as well. I may not agree with the opinions of many people on the left, but I have tremendous respect for many of these people who would defend free speech. And Rania brings up an important point about how, at the end of the day, what we see with Carlos Maza and the Vox adpocalypse is not about social justice. It's about power. It is about people who have found a path to power, exploiting the emotions of regular people, the goodwill of people, to make money and to hurt their opponents. What's really interesting about this data is that, in my opinion, my hypothesis being that this was a lucrative endeavor by companies like Upworthy, Huffington Post, Vox, BuzzFeed, etc. There's also the fact that Facebook changed their algorithm. And now YouTube is rising, and people like me are starting to do well, and it challenges them. Steven Crowder has become very prominent without the mainstream media's assistance. He doesn't need to go on TV. He can say what he wants. But now they target all of YouTube, including people like Rania getting banned, people like Ford getting banned. They don't care about actual minorities and journalists. They care about making sure they can stifle the competition and protect their lucrative endeavor when they don't really care. And as Rania pointed out, they said nothing when her content was suspended. They said nothing when a minority female challenging Donald Trump was suspended. They don't care. They literally do not care. It is a ploy, in my opinion, and it is all part of a system that makes them money. The data's there, and it is what it is. Do you agree with me? Let me know. I know that people are going to give me flack once again for making a video about how the left is being driven insane, but the data shows it. They are being exploited by, essentially, it's just kind of hilarious, a libertarian free market capitalist group of people who raise millions and millions of dollars. And I mean this not to disrespect libertarians. It's just the people that I've met working for these companies point out those at the top who make the money are very much so open, the libertarian open borders types. They want this content because it's money for them, money in their pockets. And don't take my word for it. Read the story about Mike.com. They called the guys who found that tech bros. My sources in Mike said they were very libertarian. Why would they then support this authoritarian regressive left? It was money-making content. And that's why they won't speak up for actual minority women who are getting banned. It is just about power. Thanks for hanging out. Stick around. I'll have more content coming up shortly for those on the podcast, beginning soon. For everyone else, 6 p.m., youtube.com/TimCastNews. I will see you all there. Thanks for watching.